Unfortunately, Thomas, your position is being eliminated as part of our restructuring initiative. My boss, Richard Kellerman, announced, sliding a severance agreement across his mahogany desk. Behind him, through the floor-to-ceiling windows of his corner office, I could see the Chicago skyline, where other companies were probably conducting similar meetings with similar outcomes. Your work on the automated quality control system has been met adequate, but we've decided to move in a different direction with that project. I maintained a neutral expression as I scanned the termination paperwork, noting the effective date, severance terms, and the extensive non-disclosure and non-compete clauses designed to prevent me from discussing or replicating my work elsewhere. What Richard didn't mention, what he couldn't have known, was that 3 months earlier, I had filed a provisional patent application for the core technology behind the automated quality control system. The same system he was now describing as adequate while preparing to claim full corporate ownership. I understand the business realities, I replied, signing the severance agreement with careful deliberation. When should I expect the transition of my project responsibilities? Richard's expression flickered with what might have been surprise at my composed reaction. Actually, I'll be taking over the quality control project personally, along with Jason from the implementation team. We want to ensure continuity during this transition period. I nodded thoughtfully, gathering my personal items from his desk. That makes sense. You'll want to review all the technical documentation carefully. There are some complexities in the system architecture that aren't immediately obvious. I'm sure we can handle any technical challenges, Richard said dismissively, his confidence reflecting 15 years of climbing the corporate ladder through management rather than innovation. The fundamental concept is straightforward enough. As I walked toward the door of his office, briefcase in hand, I paused to deliver what would prove to be the most significant statement of our professional relationship. Richard, you should know that I've always been very careful about intellectual property documentation. I hope that won't create any complications for the project going forward. He waved dismissively, already turning his attention to other matters. I'm sure there won't be any problems. Good luck with your future endeavors, Thomas. 24 hours later, as I sat in my attorney's office reviewing patent documents and employment contracts, I realized that Richard's assumption about handling the technical challenges was about to be tested in ways he had never anticipated. My name is Thomas Chen, 34 years old, a mechanical engineer specializing in automated manufacturing systems. For the past 6 years, I've worked at Meridian Industrial Solutions, developing quality control technologies that integrate machine learning with precision measurement systems. My background combines traditional mechanical engineering with software development and data analysis skills that have become increasingly valuable as manufacturing processes become more automated and sophisticated. I joined Meridian as a junior engineer directly out of graduate school, attracted by their reputation for innovation in industrial automation and their apparent commitment to supporting employer-driven research and development. The company culture initially seemed to encourage creative problem-solving and rewarded engineers who could develop practical solutions to complex manufacturing challenges. Richard Kellerman became my direct supervisor 3 years ago when he was promoted from project management to head the Industrial Systems Division. His background was primarily in business development and client relations rather than technical engineering, but he positioned himself as a strategic thinker who could bridge the gap between technical innovation and commercial applications. The relationship between Richard and me began cordially but deteriorated gradually as I became more successful at developing innovative solutions that attracted attention from senior management and potential clients. Richard seemed to view my technical accomplishments as threats to his own authority rather than assets that enhanced our division's capabilities. The breaking point centered around a project that had begun as my independent research into automated quality control systems for precision manufacturing. Working during evenings and weekends, I had developed algorithms that could analyze manufacturing output in real time, identifying defects and process variations with accuracy far exceeding traditional inspection methods. The technology combined computer vision, machine learning, and statistical analysis to create a system that could adapt to different products and manufacturing processes while maintaining consistent quality standards. What made my approach unique was the integration of predictive analytics that could identify potential quality issues before they occurred, allowing for preemptive process adjustments rather than reactive corrections. Initially, I developed this technology as a personal project, using my own time and resources to explore ideas that interested me beyond my official work assignments at Meridian. I maintained careful documentation of my independent research, including timestamps, version control, and records of the resources I used. Practices I had learned during graduate school, when intellectual property ownership could become complicated. In academic settings, when my prototype system demonstrated exceptional performance in preliminary testing, I made the decision to present it to Meridian management as a potential product development opportunity. This decision reflected both my loyalty to the company that had supported my career and my belief that Meridian's manufacturing expertise and client relationships could help bring the technology to market effectively. Richard's initial response to my presentation was enthusiastic. He immediately recognized the commercial potential of automated quality control systems and began discussing implementation strategies, market opportunities, and potential patent applications. However, his enthusiasm was accompanied by subtle attempts to reposition himself as a co-developer of the technology rather than simply the manager overseeing its development. "This is exactly the kind of innovative thinking our division needs," he said after my initial presentation to the senior management team. "Thomas and I have been collaborating on this concept for months, exploring different approaches to automated quality control." This characterization was factually incorrect. Richard had no involvement in the technology's development, but I chose not to contradict him publicly, assuming that his enthusiasm would translate into appropriate support for the project and recognition for my contributions. I focused on technical development while allowing Richard to handle the business and strategic aspects of moving the project forward. Over the following months, Richard's involvement in the project increased while his acknowledgement of my primary role decreased. In meetings with clients and senior management, he began presenting the technology as a team effort with his leadership and strategic vision being equally important to my technical contributions. Eventually, his presentations evolved to position himself as the project's primary innovator, with my role reduced to technical implementation of his concepts. This gradual appropriation of credit might have remained manageable if Richard had maintained collaborative decision-making about the project's direction. Instead, he began making unilateral choices about technical specifications, implementation timelines, and resource allocation decisions that reflected his limited understanding of the underlying technology and often conflicted with engineering best practices. When I raised concerns about these decisions, Richard's responses became increasingly defensive and dismissive. "Thomas, I appreciate your technical expertise, but you need to understand the bigger picture," he said during one particularly tense meeting. "This project needs strategic leadership, not just engineering solutions." "Richard, the strategic decisions you're making have technical implications that could compromise the system's performance," I replied. "We need to coordinate these choices to ensure the final product meets the quality standards we've promised clients." "I think I understand our clients' needs better than you do," he snapped. "Your job is to make the technology work according to the specifications we've agreed upon, not to second-guess business decisions." This conversation crystallized my growing concern that Richard's ambitions were undermining both the project's technical integrity and my own professional position. His increasing hostility toward my input suggested that he viewed my expertise as an obstacle to his authority rather than an asset for the project's success. Recognizing the precarious nature of my situation, I began taking defensive measures to protect my intellectual property and professional interests. 3 months before my termination, I filed a provisional patent application covering the core algorithms and system architecture I had developed. This application established my priority claim to the technology while giving me 12 months to file a complete patent application with additional technical details and claims. The provisional patent application process was straightforward, but required careful documentation of the technology's novel aspects and potential applications. I worked with a patent attorney who specialized in software and engineering innovations, ensuring that my claims were comprehensive enough to protect the technology while being specific enough to be legally defensible. Simultaneously, I began documenting Richard's increasing attempts to marginalize my role in the project. I saved emails, meeting notes, and technical communications that demonstrated the timeline of my technology development and Richard's evolving claims about his contributions. This documentation would prove essential for establishing the true ownership of the intellectual property if disputes arose later. The provisional patent filing was completed. Just as Richard's behavior became increasingly erratic and hostile, he began excluding me from client meetings where my technology was being demonstrated, scheduling important project discussions without my participation, and making technical commitments to clients without consulting me about feasibility or implementation requirements. When clients had technical questions about the system's capabilities or limitations, Richard would either provide incorrect information based on his incomplete understanding, or promise to follow up with technical details that he would then ask me to provide without crediting my expertise. This pattern created confusion among clients and team members about who was actually responsible for the technology's development. The situation reached a crisis point when Richard scheduled a major client presentation for a potential $2.8 million implementation contract without informing me until the day before the meeting. When I reviewed his presentation materials, I discovered significant technical inaccuracies and promises about system capabilities that our current technology couldn't deliver. Richard, there are several errors in this presentation that could create serious problems with client expectations, I told him during our hastily arranged pre-meeting review. The presentation is fine, Thomas. I've been working with these clients for months, and I understand what they need better than you do. But you're promising automated detection capabilities that we haven't developed yet, and accuracy levels that would require additional research and development. Then you'll need to make sure the technology delivers what we've promised. He replied with finality that suggested the conversation was over. The client presentation proceeded with Richard delivering inaccurate technical information while I sat silently, recognizing that contradicting him publicly would likely result in immediate termination, while accomplishing nothing constructive for the project or the client relationship. Instead, I took detailed notes about the commitments he made and began preparing technical documentation that would be necessary if anyone ever needed to understand what the system could actually deliver versus what had been promised. 2 weeks after that disastrous client presentation, Richard called me into his office for the termination meeting. By then, I had anticipated this outcome and prepared accordingly. My provisional patent application was filed and documented. My personal files contained comprehensive records of my technology development process. Most importantly, I had consulted with legal counsel about my rights and options regarding intellectual property, disputes with former employers. Richard's decision to fire me while claiming ownership of my technology represented the culmination of months of gradually escalating intellectual theft. What he couldn't have anticipated was that my defensive preparations had created a legal and technical record that would make his appropriation of my work both difficult to maintain and expensive to defend. After signing the severance agreement and leaving Meridian's offices for the final time, I immediately contacted my patent attorney to begin the process of converting my provisional patent application into a full utility patent. This process required detailed technical specifications, comprehensive claims about the technology's novel aspects, and legal arguments for why my innovations deserved patent protection. Simultaneously, I began consulting with an employment attorney who specialized in intellectual property disputes. The combination of my documented development timeline, the provisional patent application, and Richard's public claims about the technology created a complex legal situation that would require careful strategy to resolve effectively. 3 weeks after my termination, I learned through industry contacts that Meridian had announced a major new product launch featuring revolutionary automated quality control technology developed by our Industrial Systems division under the leadership of Richard Kellerman. The press release included technical specifications that exactly matched my patented innovations, complete with performance claims that Richard had promised to clients. Despite knowing they exceeded our current capabilities, more significantly, I discovered that Meridian had filed their own patent application for the technology, listing Richard as the primary inventor and claiming corporate ownership based on work performed during my employment. This development transformed what might have been a straightforward employment dispute into a complex intellectual property conflict with potential damages in the millions of dollars. My response was methodical and comprehensive. First, I filed a patent interference proceeding challenging Meridian's application, based on my earlier filing date and superior documentation of the invention process. Second, I initiated discussions with Meridian's competitors about licensing opportunities for my technology, establishing that independent commercial value existed for my innovations. Third, I began preparing for potential litigation by documenting the full scope of Richard's misappropriation and the damages it had caused to my professional reputation and earning potential. The patent interference process moved slowly through the bureaucratic machinery of the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office, but my superior documentation and earlier filing date made the outcome increasingly predictable. Meridian's patent attorney discovered that their clients' claims were based on appropriated technology and began advising them to settle rather than face more serious legal consequences. For months after my termination, Richard called me directly, a conversation I recorded legally after informing him of my intention to do so. "Thomas, I think there's been a misunderstanding about this patent situation," he began, his earlier confidence replaced by barely concealed concern. "I don't think there's been any misunderstanding, Richard. You fired me and then tried to patent technology I had developed and already filed for patent protection. Look, maybe we can work something out. Meridian is prepared to offer you a consulting contract to help us implement the quality control system properly." "You mean implement the system I designed and patented before you fired me? The patent office will sort out those technical details. What matters is finding a way to move forward that works for everyone. The patent office has already sorted out those details, Richard. My patent application has been approved, and your interference filing has been dismissed. Meridian is now using my patented technology without authorization." The conversation continued for 20 minutes, with Richard alternating between attempts at reconciliation and veiled threats about Meridian's legal resources. What he couldn't understand was that his decision to steal my technology had transformed a manageable employment dispute into a federal intellectual property case with significant penalties for willful infringement. 2 weeks later, I received a settlement offer from Meridian's legal department. The terms included licensing payments for past and future use of my technology, a non-disclosure agreement preventing public discussion of the dispute, and a consulting contract that would allow me to oversee proper implementation of the quality control system. The settlement amount exceeded what I would have earned during several years of continued employment at Meridian. But more importantly, it established clear ownership of my intellectual property and provided a foundation for building an independent consulting practice based on my innovations. Richard Kellerman was quietly transferred to a different division within Meridian 6 months later, his hopes for promotion based on stolen technology having evaporated when the legal complications became apparent to senior management. The client contracts he had negotiated using my technology were successfully implemented under my consulting oversight, though at significantly higher costs than originally projected due to the legal settlement requirements. A year after my termination, I had established Harrison Engineering Solutions, a consulting firm specializing in automated manufacturing technologies. My patented quality control system became the foundation for a growing practice that served clients across multiple industries. The technology that Richard had dismissed as adequate became the basis for a business that generated more revenue in its first year than my previous salary at Meridian. Most satisfying was the recognition that my defensive preparations, particularly the early patent filing, had been essential for protecting my interests when Richard's behavior escalated to outright theft. The methodical approach that had characterized my technical work proved equally valuable for navigating complex legal and business challenges. Today, Harrison Engineering Solutions holds multiple patents for innovative manufacturing technologies, with each development carefully documented and protected from the beginning of the research process. The experience with Richard taught me that intellectual property protection isn't just about preventing theft, it's about ensuring that innovators can benefit from their own creativity and hard work. My boss fired me after stealing my project, not knowing I'd already patented the core technology. His attempt to appropriate my work became the catalyst for establishing my own successful business based on innovations he had dismissed as merely adequate. The experience demonstrated that careful preparation and strategic thinking can transform apparent setbacks into opportunities for greater success than would have been possible within the original constraints. The lesson extends beyond intellectual property to broader principles about protecting your work and maintaining control over your professional destiny. Sometimes the greatest threat to your success comes not from external competition, but from colleagues and supervisors who view your achievements as obstacles to their own advancement. Recognizing and preparing for these threats isn't paranoia. It's professional survival in environments where innovation and ambition don't always align with integrity and fairness.